So welcome back, guys, and what I want to do before we even get started in this video today is to make sure that you understand that this is not a full video review of the SAPPHIRE Nitro Plus RX 590 Special Edition. For the review, you're going to head over to the link down in the description below. What we're talking about specifically in this video is sort of performance related, but not entirely. So what we're looking at is, well, okay, so the RX 590, what it is a beefed up version of the Polaris GPU. So the big boy Polaris with 2304 stream processors, but this time around, it's clocked in at 1560 megahertz rather than, well, the reference 480 launched, a couple years ago now at 1266 megahertz, and it barely ever reached that frequency. So this carries a TDP of 225 watts. Not a small amount by any stretch of the imagination. But again, GPU cores running at 1560 megahertz, and it stays there flat whole time the card's running. 1080, 1440, really didn't spend much time at 4K. That's not what this card was designed for. This card was designed specifically with high-end 1080p in mind. If you see the review numbers, you'll see that it's 1440p capable if you have a good FreeSync monitor. I wouldn't recommend it running 1440p outside of that, or unless the games that you're running aren't really as demanding as some of the modern AAA titles that we tested. But what we wanted to do was explore the power draw of this card at various settings. So it does have a low power or silent mode, and we didn't mess with that because, quite frankly, we wanted to have it topped out versus what else it could do. So I'm going to put a table up on the screen now from the review that will hopefully give you a better idea of what we did in our testing. So we tested the 590 at several different settings. Now in the review, we didn't have a 580 on hand, and I'm sure some people will take issue with that. But what we're looking at here is specifically Polaris 10 versus Polaris 30 when it comes to power, because a lot of people have this idea that it's just a pumped 480 or a pumped 580. But it is a 12 nanometer process that they used for the same 12 nanometer they used on their CPUs. So AMD used on their CPU, so hopefully there are some power savings advantage here, but it looks like what they did with the 590 was they threw it out the window, and I'm going to show you why I think they threw those efficiency curves out the window. So the four different variations that we tested of the 590, so we've got 480 and 1060 results in here when we get those graphs up on screen, but those are reference 480 8GB and GTX 1060 6GB Founders Edition, but the variations of the 590 are the four at the top. So we did run it at stock. So just so you know, stock runs at 1150 millivolts on the top P state, but we left the power limit at 0, the core clock alone at 1560, and the memory at 2100. So we did do a bit of undervolting with the 590. So we took it down to 1075 millivolts and took it down by negative 10% on the power limit while maintaining the constant 1560 megahertz core and the 2100 megahertz memory. Now, the other thing that we wanted to test in here was what if we took the RX 590 and we ran it at RX 480 speeds, meaning 1266 megahertz. We did leave the voltage at auto so that the card could regulate itself to see just what it did, and then the memory at 2000 megahertz. So what we did, we took all the pumping away. So what we wanted to do is see how efficient has the card become versus a reference 480. And well, that's how we got there. So 1266 megahertz, 2000 memory, auto on the voltage, and a negative 25% on the power limit. Was able to maintain 1266 megahertz with no problem with a negative 25% power limit, which is quite interesting because the 480 that you're going to see the results at stock did not maintain 1266. They fluctuated around 1100. So in around the 1100 range. So big performance, well, not a big performance, but there's a performance difference there. But then again, we really, to see where the 480 is, I took our 480 and I overclocked it as much as I could. So the most I could get out of it was 1325 megahertz. I know there's better clockers out there and the 580 clock's better than that, but that's just the reality of Polaris 10. So 1325 with 2250 on the memory. And now to get there, we left the voltage at auto because it was fine, and we took the power limit to plus 50. So what about performance-wise? How does this translate into performance? Well, we see the undervolted 590 performed right there within margin of error, within 100 points on Firestrike graphics score. So that is really good to see. And if you take the 590 down to 480 levels, you see here that it is outperforming the RX 488 gigabyte as it comes out of the box. So about 300, 400 points there, almost 500 points difference. That's a pretty good delta there. Now, we took the 480 and of course I overclocked it, and you see that it performed well ahead of the 590 at 480 clocks. So obviously, so 15 to, just 15,000 points there. I tried to test Time Spy, but the 480 would not finish, so those results aren't here. What about thermals? So thermals are really interesting here. So the 590 ran cool already, set at 75C, very, very quiet. Once it was undervolted, it dropped it down 3 degrees, down to 72, and the fans actually reduced speed, so it got even quieter, which was really cool to see. But dropping it down to 480 clocks, the sucker did not get past it. It touched 60C one time, but it stayed sitting at 59 degrees Celsius. 480, however, it gained a 1 degree Celsius at 82. So but it was screaming. It was unbearably loud at that point. But what about power draw? See, all of the performance and the thermals are one thing, but what does that translate into actual power draw? Well, the 590 is no joke a power hog. Total system draw with the i5 8600K at 5 gigahertz, 16 gigs of DDR4, 3200, pull a total system draw of 350 watts. That's 130 watts more than the GTX 1060 setup, and 85 watts more than the 480. Performance is there, yes, but that's a lot of power to be pulling. What about undervolting? Undervolting took it down by 66 watts, or 56 watts. Math is bad at the moment. Took it down 56 watts to under 300 watt for total system draw. So you're looking at a less than 30 watt increase for substantially more performance from the 480. But what if we run it at 480 clocks? 230 watts. So we're down from the 480, from 265 down to 230, and maintaining higher core clocks. Well, the actual targeted core clock for the 480. And if you took the 480 and you overclocked it to even this 1325, you can see that its power was running away at 310 watts. So at the end of the day, there was efficiency improvements made since Polaris 10. Now, maybe some people will think, well, Keith, you had to stretch pretty far to show that. But the reality is, AMD was presented with the option of either making it more efficient or more power. And I can understand why they went for more power, because in this price range and at 1080p, 300, let's just be honest, I'm going to throw this out here. Now, I will agree that I want lower power. Lower power tends to mean lower thermals, easier run. It's just a lot smoother in the long run. But 350 watts total system draw from an 8600K at 5 gigahertz, 16 gigs of RAM, 2 storage devices, and this card running 1080p balls out at 350 watts. It's 350. Most people are going to be running 500 watt or greater power supply. You're going to be fine with this. And if you're really worried about it, if you're in thermally constrained environments, you can tweak the voltage and get some really good results out of this card. So at the end of the day, I still stand by the review. This thing's an 8 out of 10. It's a great card. I didn't even take the game bundle into account for the review, because I'm not reviewing the game bundle, I'm reviewing the card. And we're taking a look at the card, not the games. The games are a great value add. Good job on AMD and Radeon for including that. Good for gamers. But even without the bundle, it's a really good card. I think it's caught a little bit more flack than it should have. It's just my personal opinion. I tend to be a little positive, so people say, but it is what it is. The SAPPHIRE Nitro Plus RX 590 is pretty efficient when you want it to be.